Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, thank you for coming along for this experience. I just met somebody the other day who says they've been listening to my podcast, and I've been getting emails from someone who suddenly discovered the podcast and went back to episode number 1 and is going through 5 years of this. So God bless you. Give you strength, chazak ve'amatz. And it's just so much fun because every now and then I see they're commenting on like ones that I did years ago. And the messages remain hopefully relevant no matter where we are or what happens. So as we're making this podcast, we're still in the middle of this war with Hamas, and already many people in the media and the world are turning against us. Some of them are not even pretending that it's anything other than anti-Semitism. Big rally in Sydney, Australia, chanting "Kill the Jews." So it's pretty clear what's going on over here and the motivations. So we have only Avinu Shebashamayim. That's all. This, as I mentioned last time, this is an attack that is beyond our scope to comprehend. And my son-in-law, who is in the unit in the army for collecting the dead. Usually they go into a battlefield and after people have been killed, right? The wounded are taken out by the chavesh, but people have been killed. He's part of that unit that goes in to collect the bodies. Well, everybody else has been waiting to go into Gaza and training. He's been very busy. He's been going from village to village and collecting all the dead. Please have him in your tefillas along with all of the other people who are on the front lines there fighting and dealing with everything. Yisrael Meir Ben Tzipora Alita. So I said to him, how is it, I said, is it as bad as everybody says? He says, no, it's worse. It's worse. He didn't want to give me details, and that's probably just as well because I'll sleep better at night. But he said probably one of the most horrific things is that in all my years in the army, you collect the wounded on the battlefield. You understand that, this is a battlefield. He says, I'm walking into a house where the table is set for yontif, a bottle of wine on the table, and everyone's dead. It's just a horrific contrast. I can only imagine what he has to go through. Someone told me that when 9/11 took place in Savannah, Georgia, they had a canine division that was there to search for survivors in the rubble. And they sent the dogs up to New York to look for survivors and or to find the dead, either one. And he says after a while, they just had to have people lying in the rubble. They had to put live people there just like to lie down there because if the dogs just kept finding dead people, they started to go crazy. So imagine the pressure on someone like my tzaddik of a son-in-law who has to sit there and bring people to Kvur Yisrael just over and over again. What a terrible, terrible toll it's taking. So we haven't even, as of when I'm recording this, we haven't started the ground invasion yet. And all the bombing has been just to be able to uncover the bunkers so that they can then go in and engage in urban hand-to-hand warfare. Terrible, terrible things. Kodesh Baruch Hu should Shomer Yisrael lo yanum v'lo yishan. Yeah, he doesn't rest, he doesn't sleep. Hopefully he'll watch over us. But what are the takeaways that for ourselves right now when we're working on this? Because you want to do something. Yeah. I told you this in the Yom Kippur War when it broke out in 1973. My father said, here I am in America, and there are young men giving their lives I got to do something. So he started wearing tefillin and davening every morning. I got to do something. So obviously there's a call to action. And of course, davening is what we need to do. We need to keep davening. There's no question about it. I spoke about that last time. But there is maybe one other aspect. My son, who was learning in the mirror, had a special kenis. And one of the things they stressed was the following. This attack took place on Shabbos. And there's perhaps a message for us. Now, again, there are no Nevi'im today. No one can say why anything happened. But you try as best as you can to try to connect the dots, at least for yourself, to try to make some kind of sense out of it. So, there are stories. I haven't verified any of these. I'm telling you up front, I haven't verified any of them. One of my kids told me a story about 3 people who were at this rave out in the desert. And it started on Thursday. It was Friday. And on Friday, 2 of the guys said to their third friend, listen, we got to go back to Yerushalayim because we keep Shabbos and we're not going to stay here on Shabbos. They're like, yeah, but the party's just getting going. And I said, I can't, we have to leave. So they picked up and they rushed to Yerushalayim and they got back to Yerushalayim just before Lich benching. And the friend realized that because he respected his friend's shmiras Shabbos, that's what has saved him. I've heard a story that the terrorists had explosives to break through the fence and the wall to the security, but not to break through in the kibbutzim and moshavim. If you've ever been to Israel, so you know there's protective walls around, and then there's this big metal gate. And of course, they wanted to come in with their trucks. And, so what was their thing? And the Hamas showed a video of this. They hid until a car would come, and the car would, have an opener, and they would open the gate. Once they opened the gate, and started to drive in, then the Hamas jumped out and killed everybody in the car. And the car blocked the gate from closing, and then they were able to drive in. And Yeshuvim that were Shomer Shabbos, they couldn't break in because there was nobody coming to open the gate. And so they moved on to places that would be easier for them to get in. Jonathan Rosenblum writes that there was one moshav, which was Masorati. They were traditional. But that Shabbos Punkt, they decided to start keeping Shabbos. They said, this Shabbos, we're going to keep Shabbos. We're not driving. We're not opening the gate. And the terrorists couldn't get into their moshav. So, like I say, I haven't tried to verify any of these stories, etc. But there are a lot of stories coming out of how shmiras Shabbos helped to protect. It's an interesting expression, shmiras Shabbos, right? Just as much as we are shomer Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shomer us when we keep Shabbos. Shabbos is a shmira to be able to protect us. So if we're looking for where we can strengthen ourselves, there's no question that shmiras Shabbos is probably an area where we can use chizuk. So I decided that we will dedicate some of the coming podcasts to the concept of Shabbos and talk a little bit about Shabbos and maybe use that as a way for us to be able to strengthen our own shmiras Shabbos and Shabbos for Klal Yisrael. And in that process, hopefully use this as a shmira for all of those people who are now in terrible danger. Yeah. Ben Shapiro made an observation, which is true, and that is that Hamas comes in and does all these atrocities and then hide behind civilians. And then if we go after them, so we end up killing civilians. So they say, well, you can't do that. So what are you doing? You're incentivizing people to hide behind civilians. Because if I can do any terrible thing I want, and then I hide behind civilians, and you're not allowed to attack me, so I can come and attack you, and you can't attack me back. Yeah. So we, of course, are sorry for any loss of life. We're not looking to kill innocents, but if murderers decide to hide their headquarters under a hospital or in a school or in a residential building and innocents get killed, it's not really on the fault of the people chasing the terrorists. It's the fault on the people who are committing the crimes and then like cowards hiding behind civilians. There were pictures from the last Gaza war where Hamas terrorists would grab a kid and hold him in front of him as he was running in order to be able to protect himself. They figure, okay, shoot the kid. Brave fighters. So in any event, so this is one of these terms you hear, proportionality. I remember in one of the Gaza wars, been a number of them already with Hamas. So Mayor Bloomberg, he was still mayor of New York, he was on CNN, and they said, do you think Israel's response is proportionate? He says, it shouldn't be proportionate. He says, I'm the mayor of New York. If I get a call that there's a gunman in Times Square, according to you, I can only send one police officer after him with the same type of weapon that he has. What are you, crazy? I'm going to send a SWAT team. You understand? I'm going to do whatever I can to take out this threat to innocence. So, no, we're not talking about proportionality. One person observed, he goes, according to that, you'd have to wait to find a music festival in Gaza and then kill exactly the same amount of people in exactly the same way as happened here if you want to be proportional. Yeah. So like I say, Am Shachen Levadai, the Torah says about the Jewish people, we live alone. That is, when we mourn alone, and when we celebrate, we celebrate alone. Nobody shares our simchas and our tragedies. So, we have to take care of ourselves. That's how it goes. So, it's so interesting. They say, why isn't Israel taking in the refugees? It says, well, there's a lot of Arabs. Why aren't they taking in the refugees? None of them seem terribly concerned. In any event, this is politics. I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about Shabbos. So I became Shomer Shabbos when I was 12. I grew up in a home that was not Shomer Shabbos, and the fact that my father worked Friday night and Saturday. But when he would come home Friday night, whatever time he came home, my mother would light candles, and my father would make kiddush, and he would wash. He was the only one who would wash. He'd make hamotzi, and we'd have, chicken soup and brisket, and a Friday night suda. So there was a tzura of Shabbos. So some kind of a tzura that I grew up with. But when my Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Wales Atzal, forced me into a corner, an intellectual corner, where I had no choice but to recognize the truth of Torah at the age of 12. I was always precocious. And I realized this is true. So then I knew I had no choice but to keep it. Not everybody makes those kind of decisions. I'm always surprised to hear that. But a lot of people are not motivated by the truth. It's just not enough for a lot of people, I remember I said to my friends when I was fighting with him, and I already styled myself as something of an intellectual. I said to my friends, we have to argue with him. And they said, just ignore him. I said, but what if he's right? They said, ignore him anyway. I couldn't do that, because if he's right, then how do you close your eyes to the truth? So that's how I became from. These people become Shomer Shabbos because they spent the Shabbos someplace and they had, a cholent and they had a nice time, etc. Not me. I went kicking and screaming. It was a difficult thing for me to become from. My life was finally, in a good place. And I destroyed everything by becoming frum and starting over again, So, but in any event, I went through the process. So by the time I was bar mitzvah, I was already Shomer Shabbos. And I spent a lot of Shabbosim by myself. And it's kind of lonely. I remember at the time I said that I was going to have guests when I got married because I wanted to be able to have a home and have guests. As it is, I would find a couple of guys who were, like me, loners, and we would invite them over for Shabbos lunch. We would sit down and have Shabbos lunch together, especially in those long summer Shabbosim when Shabbos goes out at 9:00 at night. It's a toll for a kid, to get through that. But I remember most profoundly the Shabbosim in the autumn, the beginning. Parashas, Noach, Lech Lecha, Ve'era, those first weeks of autumn. Now, okay, full disclosure, I love autumn. It's my favorite time of the year. Yeah. Spring is just too hopeful for me. Summer is just too hot and the winter is just too cold. But autumn, I love it. All the trees turn colors and it's hypnotically beautiful. And the weather is crisp but not cold. And it's just, everything about it's nice. The strange thing is, of course, that when they change the clock, that suddenly Shabbos comes in at 4 o'clock, 4:15. Look, mentioning 4:15. And suddenly, boom, you have these long Friday nights. Yeah, which a lot of people aren't used to. So I love those Shabbosim. I love it when it comes in early and it's a little, like I say, crisp. It's not cold, and sit down to a hot bowl of chicken soup and you're exhausted. I don't know why on a short Shabbos I'm tireder on Friday night than I am, on a summer one when it's later. But the best one is to sing the old Menucha v'Simcha. That just knocks you right out. Menucha v'Simcha. And you fall face first into your chicken soup. That's okay because it's nice and warm, and you cover yourself with a few noodles. That's why they came up with matzo balls, so that it's like a little pillow. But to me, that's Shabbos, and I guess maybe part of it is because, as you know, since the Chachamim decided to take Shmini Atzeres and turn it into Simchas Torah, so right after Simchas Torah, you start having a Shabbos. Now, last year the calendar was more dramatic. Yeah, this year was a little more straightforward. But last year, I remember, you have the last Shabbos of the year, and then you have Rosh Hashanah, and then you have Shabbos Shuvah, and then you have Yom Kippur, and then you have an extra Shabbos before Sukkot, which is Nishta Hin, Nishta Her. It's like just sort of there. And then you have Sukkot, then you have Chol Moed Sukkot, Shabbos, and then you have Shmini Atzeres. And when the dust finally clears, you come to Shabbos Bereshis. And Shabbos Bereshis is Shabbos. I don't remember who made the observation, but they said, one of the pities is that Shabbos comes every week. If it came once a year, just a plain ordinary Shabbos, it would have so much chashivas to us. But it comes every week. So we start to take it for granted. Now, I remember when I was engaged to my wife, she said at one point, I feel like I'm just afraid that if we're married for a long time, we'll take each other for granted. I said, I hope so. If you don't take your husband or wife for granted, then when you're saying is, I wake up every morning and I'm not sure if they're there or not. Oh, you're still here. What a surprise. Yeah. You want to take it for granted. Yeah. Shabbos is what our entire week is. And that's why there's a mitzvah, Zochas Yom HaShabbos L'Kadshay, which means Hayom Yom Rishon l'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni l'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Shlishi l'Shabbos. Every day we're counting towards Shabbos. Right? The first 3 days of the week are left over from the last Shabbos. In fact, you can make Havdalah, if need be, till Tuesday. And then already starting Wednesday, that's already getting ready for the next Shabbos. Yeah. And that's why we added on at the end of the Shir Shayom on Wednesday, L'chuna Rananoh, which is, of course, the next kapitel, but it's the beginning of Kabbalah Shabbos. We're getting ready for Shabbos. We're in that Shabbos mode. Yeah. I've a neighbor told me years ago that how do you know that Wednesday is the beginning of Shabbos? Because, I tell my family, I'm putting out all the Shabbos leftovers on Tuesday. You better finish it. It's Wednesday. We're already getting ready for the next Shabbos, so I can't have any more Shabbos leftovers. So the idea is that our entire week revolves around Shabbos, and Shabbos should be something that is so comfortable to us, where we live in Shabbos. Adam died when he ate from the Eitz Hadas. The only reason he stayed alive is because of Shabbos. He got his neshama yisera. And he lived on his neshama yisera for the rest of his life. That extra soul that you get. That's the only thing that kept him going. And you get this extra neshama on Shabbos, which means that we really live in Shabbos, and everything else is just preparing for Shabbos or coming after Shabbos. But our life is Shabbos. And I remember when I was running NCSY, and we made a lot of Shabbatonim. At my height, almost every Shabbos between Sukkot and Pesach, we were running anywhere from 1 to 3 Shabbatonim every single Shabbos. We had strike teams, and we were going around to different communities and making, what we used to call, local Shabbatonim. We'd have the big regionals; those were big shows. But you didn't do the real work there. The real work was at the smaller Shabbatonim in each community. An amazing concept. I have a friend, Yehuda Albin, who runs a Kiruv organization in Chicago, and it's called Torah Hub. And the idea is that it's a clearinghouse for all of the other organizations, and he raises money to be able to help them out. And he told me once, he says, there's this balabos, this Jewish guy, and I kept trying to get him over my house for Shabbos, and he wouldn't come. And I finally said, you know what? I'll come to you. I packed up my wife and kids, and we brought our own food, and brought our own hot plates, brought everything like that, and we stayed in his house for Shabbos. And we made Shabbos for him in his house. And okay, so, he would go shopping in the middle, or he would go to the club, or he would. But for some of it, I actually got him to sit and participate in Shabbos, which is an amazing thing. Because, to be able to bring people Shabbos is the life of a Jew. A Jew revolves around Shabbos. I'll tell you a story. When I was living in Los Angeles, this story was probably, I'm trying to think now, 1978, maybe it was 79, I'm not sure. But A.B. Rottenberg of Dveikis and Marvelous Midos and all kinds of Jewish music fame, was the principal of the boys' school. And him and his wife were going up to this Shabbos in Big Bear Mountains in California, outside of LA. It's about a 4-hour drive. For my New York friends, let me try to put this into perspective. I hate snow. I've always hated snow. There's nothing about it that I like. It's cold. It's wet. It gets inside of your boots. It gets inside of your hands. It's just, everything about it is terrible. What could be worse than going outside and finding that not only is your car snowed over, but the plows came by down the street and buried it in snow, and you go out with your shovel and you dig until you able to get enough room to pull your car out, and you clear off your car and everything, and you take off, and right away someone moves into your spot. You're just cleaned, It's I remember one year in New York, it was snowstorm after snowstorm. I remember watching they were in snowplows. They had like tractors picking up the snow and putting them in dump trucks and dumping it into the river. It was nothing, just terrible. So anyway, it was in the middle of January that I ended up moving to LA. And I come out there, and it's in the 70s in January, There are palm trees growing, birds of paradise, And they said, oh, it's been a terrible, terrible winter. It's been raining a lot. And I was like, raining? I would trade snow for rain any day, So to me, I hate snow. There's nothing about snow that I find attractive, Every now and then they predict snow here in Yerushalayim. And all my children, when they were little, they were so excited because, they wanted to see snow. And I said, this is tough because my tefillas have to fight against thousands of little Jewish children who are all davening for snow. And I alone am calling in all my schuyas, God, please, please don't make it for snow. Because as bad as snow is in New York, it's even worse here in Yerushalayim because they have no way of dealing with it. We had one major snowstorm years ago. The whole city was closed down for weeks. It was just terrible, They don't even know what to do with it, Whereas when you go to certain places, up north, when it snows, it's like, they live in snow, Well, I went to yeshiva in Rochester, New York, where there was snow on the ground from October to May. Parenthetically, Rochester has one of the highest suicide rates in America for what I consider to be obvious reasons. But, I hate snow, So in Los Angeles, go see snow. It's very exciting, People don't mind seeing snow as a dilettante as long as they don't have to actually live with it. So these mountains outside of LA where in the winter it snows, and there was going to be this organization was making a Shabbaton, and Rabbi Rottenberg asked if I would go with them, him and his wife, to try to do kiruv at this event. It was supposed to be kosher, but they weren't sure about it. So Mrs. Rottenberg made her own food. We're taking it along. We figured, okay, the challahs are probably okay. The wine is probably okay. Anyway, we set out with plenty of time on an Erev Shabbos. Note, you should always start out early on Erev Shabbos. Do not wait till the last minute to travel. How many hair-raising stories are there of people who, end up getting stuck on the highway or stuck here or stuck there because, they didn't leave themselves enough time. So we left ourselves plenty of time. And we're traveling up into the Big Bear Mountains. And we were the third car after the landslide. It's one of these mountain roads. And there was a landslide. And there was some park ranger or something like that over there. And that's it. The road is closed until they can get someone to come and clean up the landslide. And we missed it by 3 cars. We got the third car. So we said, how can we get there? He goes, well, you can go down the mountain, go around the mountain, and come up from the other side. It'll take you about 8 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, something like that. So we made a quick cheshbon and said, well, that would get us there during Shabbos. And that doesn't sound like a good idea. And so on Friday afternoon in the winter, we raced back to Los Angeles. You don't race anywhere in the Los Angeles area. There's no such concept. It's bumper to bumper. So we came down from the mountains and we're on the road, making our way very slowly back to Los Angeles. And as we're going, you can see the sea in the distance and the sun moving lower and lower down the horizon. Now that's a very beautiful sight if it's not Erev Shabbos. It's Erev Shabbos. I one time said to somebody I was walking with, I said, oh, look how beautiful it is. It's almost sunset. He goes, yeah, it's a beautiful sight if you're already daven mincha. I didn't daven mincha yet. different things mean different things to different people. Anyway, we're watching it slowly. It's all flat over there, so you're just watching the sun moving down the horizon. And finally, we made the cheshbon. We weren't going to make it. So we jumped off of the highway into a small town known as Ontario, California. If you have the opportunity to miss Ontario, California, take advantage of it. This is not any place you want to be. It's best known for its racetrack, the Ontario racetrack. Yeah. Anyway, we pull off the highway and we found a trucker's motel. That was about all there was. We pulled in the car in between. And we quickly started emptying the car. We were running out of time. And we run out to the local supermarket because we need challahs and wine. Now, in Ontario, California, as a big surprise, they don't carry kosher wine in the supermarket. Apparently, there's not a big demand for it. So, okay, he bought beer. And we found a box of matzahs. You can always find a box of matzahs for hamotzi, and lots of ice. And they filled up the bathtub with ice and, put all the food in there so that it would stay throughout Shabbos. And we had adjoining rooms, and I went into my room and to get ready for Shabbos and to daven in Ontario, California, a truck stop motel. I just threw myself on the bed and did what I do best, feel sorry for myself. I don't do it so much. Ever since my heart attack 10 years ago, in March will be 10 years, when two of the doctors told me I should have died. And I say, okay, I'm still here. I'm on overtime now. This is extra. So I don't feel sorry for myself so much anymore. But back then I'd always feel sorry for myself as a kid, especially. I was a real sad sack. But anyway, so I said, I can't believe it. I'm going to spend Shabbos at some trucker motel and, it's like, what are the facilities? I think there's a soda machine. I'm not sure. It's like in the middle of the highway. Anyway, the last time I remember feeling that sorry for myself was when I became regional director of Long Island. And technically, when you become the NCSY director, you're automatically the OU director. And I was the OU director of Long Island. Now, considering there was one kid in the region, it's not as chashuv as it might sound, But by the second year, I was up to about 100 kids, but still not so chashuv. But I was the OU director. And they were having the OU convention in Boston. I drove up in this terrible storm. And it was in November, so it's also a short Shabbos, and I get there, and I check in, I get a fancy hotel room, I'm in the OU convention, and I go up. And I had, at the time, this sort of nice gray suit with like a little red stripe in it. I had a red-gray tie, put it all together so beautifully. And I had picked up my clothes from the cleaners on the way, and instead of giving me my suit pants, he gave me a pair of beige slacks. Now, there is nothing that can bring together a pair of beige slacks with a gray jacket with a red stripe in it. Not unless you put on like a clown hat, and juggle. So I remember I opened up my clothes. I just kept looking, like that sense of disbelief. I threw myself on the bed. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? It was pretty embarrassing. But at the end of that, I remember I said to the national director, I said, it seems kind of silly to bring all of us regional directors to this convention and not give us anything to do. In my mind, that meant like you should give us a forum or something to talk. They said, yeah, you're right. And they never invited us again. So that was my contribution to the cause. Much as the Torah tells us about the moon, who says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hey, you can't have two kings with one crown. He says, oh, good, I'll make you small. He goes, hey, that wasn't what I was trying to get at. So I arranged for future regional directors to never be invited to the OU convention. That was my contribution to the cause. But anyway, so here I am in this truck stop motel, and I just throw myself on the bed. And I say, I can't believe this is happening. Yeah. Okay, so I get dressed and I daven and I knock on the adjoining door, and I came in, and 88, 98, 08, 18, this is 45 years ago. And I will never forget what I saw. Yeah. So A.B. Rottenberg is all dressed for Shabbos. Yeah. And his wife is all dressed for Shabbos. And she took these napkins and put it on the little motel, half table. She lit candles. The challahs were out. Well, the matzahs were out. And it suddenly hit me. It's Shabbos. I mean, all those weeks that I had to spend Shabbos by myself because my parents went to work, and I'm sitting there singing shmiras to myself. This is already better. You can make Shabbos anywhere because Shabbos is a reality. Shabbos moves beyond boundaries. Yeah. Which is probably why it says the reward for keeping Shabbos, is a reward without limitations, is the way it's described. Yeah. Beyond limitations. Shabbos moves beyond everything. Shabbos is inherent. All right. The Gemara says the difference between Shabbos and Yontif, one of the differences, is that you decide Yontif. The Beis Din decides when Rosh Chodesh will be and decides Yontif. But Shabbos comes every 7 days. It's something that is inherent inside of it, and it's an opportunity that comes to us every week. So the first point that I would like to make in this new series, speaking about Shabbos, is appreciate Shabbos. Take it for granted that Shabbos is here and that we should always treasure it every single week when it comes. How we do that, we'll talk about. But at least let's start with the idea that what could be more beautiful, more chashuv, and more important in the life of a Jew than Shabbos? So I hope this will be the beginning of a new series, and we will talk a little bit more about Shabbos as these weeks go. And like I say, in this time specifically when this terrible attack happened on Shabbos, we should be mischazek ourselves in this regard. And now we come to the question and answer period of our program. We haven't had this in a while, with all the Yom Tovim and with the matziv and things like that. But life must go on. Life will find a way. Yeah. They tell a story in one of the concentration camps that they put God on trial. And for the Holocaust. They found him guilty. He was guilty. So they say, okay, what do we do now? Dav mincha. Life has to go on. Life has to go on. Okay. I'd like to remind everybody that in addition to being able to sponsor the podcast, and in addition to being able to sponsor the 5-minute Parsha segments that have started to come out, you also have the option to sponsor the Q&A and get a special shout out. Right? This is everything that we do here is chashuv, but of course the question and answer is an opportunity for people to be able to ask those questions they may not be able to get answers to, and have the opportunity to watch Rabbi Orlofsky try to avoid answering them. Okay, our first question is by Anonymous. What's the idea behind changing a sick person's name? Why should changing their name change the Gezar Din? Gewaltige question. My good friend, Dr. Mordechai Stern, who is not only a genius in implants, and one of the top people in the world when it comes to that, dental implants, but also an enormous Talmid Chacham, and had connection to many of the great Gedolei Torah. He has stories that you could start today, and by the end of the week, you still will not have heard all of his stories about various gedolim that he personally had interaction with. Just really, really amazing things. And he said to me once, by the way, he says, I don't look at myself as a dentist. I don't look at myself as doing implants. I look at myself as a Baal Chesed. Person comes into my office and they can't eat an apple, and they walk out. They can eat an apple. I've given them a gift, given them something to make their life better. Anyway, so I'll tell you one more Mati Stern story. He said that sometimes he has people come in and they say, we can't afford to pay. So he used to have you ever see those donation cards? They used to give out at Yisker, where you fold over the flap. So there was 0. There was, a small amount, a large amount, full pay. He says he would give it to someone and say, just fold over what you can pay. Don't worry about it. He says, no one ever took 0. Ever, Well, I chazer that over my head all the time. What a beautiful, beautiful idea. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this story is because, like I say, you could just listen to him tell stories for a week straight. Yeah. So he told me this story, and this stays with me. Every Parshas Akev, I think of this story. He says he's at a bris. I have a friend of his, and I don't know if he wants the person's name publicized. So their last name starts with a B. Imagine any name that you want. Yeah, I'll tell you the name. The name was not Burger. Okay, we'll pretend it was Burger. Right? And they're all waiting for the bris to start. The moil is there. Everything's all set up. Everybody's there except for the parents and the baby. And surprisingly, they play a very significant role in the bris. So you really would like to have them there. Anyway, so, Mati's more proactive, so he goes and searches for them, and they find the mother's sitting there crying, and the husband is looking helpless, and the baby's not really doing anything at that point. And he says, what's going on? So he says, my wife can't decide whether to name the baby Kalman Akiva or Akiva Kalman. So he says, what's the question? It's Parshas Akev. Rosh Tevos, Akiva Kalman Burger. Shkoyach, Kvata. Every Parshas Akev, when I look at the word Akev, I think of that story, yeah. So when you name a kid, it's an amazing thing. Because it's a moment when you get nevuah. Yeah. There is a very chush of a person that I know, and I don't know if he wants this mentioned or not. It's not secret, but he had a name to give his son at the bris. And the moil says, what's the name? He says, I don't know why. I said, Avshalom. Now, Avshalom, Esav, Nimrod, these are some of the names that we don't usually give, Jesus, Benedict Arnold. I mean, there's certain names, Adolf, certain names you don't give. He says, Avshalom. And the Miles didn't even blink. Avshalom ben, da-da-da-da. And he was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And they asked the Shaila, and they said, that's the name. When it comes to naming your kids, that's the time that you get nevuah. And the fact is that I never got it right ever once. Any name that I gave was not the right name. It wasn't there. Nobody was ever happy. You know what I mean? My father loved his mother as Mariam. You know what I mean? So I named my daughter Miriam. I said, Dad, I married a name for your mother. He goes, her name was Mariam. I said, Dad, that's just a Russian version of Miriam. It's named my mother-in-law, I said, I named you, my daughter Rachel for your mother. He goes, her name was really Rachel. I said, it's the same name. So finally, when it came to my last daughter, we were naming for Aunt Minnie, who everybody loved, I said, what's her name? It's Mindel. I said, okay, that wouldn't have been my first choice, but, when you have 8 girls, I named my 7th daughter Bat Sheva. I was going to name Mindel originally Bat Shmona because I just ran out of ideas, what I mean? It's not getting a Mindel. By the way, she does not like her name. She's made this very clear many times. But okay. In America, people have Mindy. Mindy's pretty common. But here in Israel, it's like, Mindy. Mindel. It's like, so she doesn't like her name. So I named her Mindel. So I told my mom-in-law, I said, I named her Mindel. She never liked that name. Never got it right. Anyway, but you have this moment of inspiration where you name a person, and that is who the person is. Baruch Rabinowitz, who is a legend in the field of Jewish education, he told me a story once where he got involved with this makubal. That's a great story for itself, but I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I'm just going to tell you this one thing, that at some point somebody was sick, and he gave the person the name. Now, usually a ger gets a name like Ben Avraham. So you know that the person is so-and-so Ben Avraham, you know he's a ger. This person didn't. He took a different name for himself. Chves, Moshe ben Shmuel, who knows what, And he tells him the makubal, he tells him the name. He goes, oh, he's a ger? There was nothing in the name to indicate that. But, you make a mistake by thinking that a name is a random thing that we call something. As Shakespeare says, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. As Dave Berg, who used to write for Mad Magazine, said, I don't think so. If you called it a curduncle, I don't think it would have the same appeal. Or as the old commercial goes, with a name like Smuckers, it has to be good. Because why in the world would you name it that unless you knew it was really good? So when you give somebody a name, that is who they are. Think of it as a strip of DNA. And the letters have significance, the numerical value of the letters, the shape of everything's significant. When you change a person's name, you have changed their metzius. Not just I'm calling them a different name. When I give this person a different name, they're a different person. That's why there are certain people who get very upset when you add on another name when you're naming for somebody, right? You're naming for somebody and his name was Yitzchak. And, I decided to add on from my side of the family, Yaakov. So we call him Yitzchak Yaakov. Yeah. That's not the person's name. It's a new name you created. It's very nice. Maybe it gives covet to both to Yitzchak and to Yaakov, who you're naming for. But that's not the person. You didn't name for the person. Yeah. When you're naming for a person, yeah, it's taking on that person. Saito, who you named for me, Matol's wife was meant to be. Anyway, if you appreciate the reference. So when I change a person's name, I didn't just change their name. I changed who they are. This is now a different person. And so because of that, they can be subject to a different Gezar Din. Okay, next question is by Yair Dahan. I have a group of friends who are all young married guys with 1 or 2 kids. All of us, including myself, do not enjoy our jobs. Should we just keep switching, or maybe you're not supposed to enjoy your job? There's no mitzvah not to enjoy your job. That's not a hinder. Now, it's my father, Shalom, he used to say, if you didn't get up in the morning and go to work, you starve to death. There was no concept that the government was going to take care of you or things were going to that. You did what you had to do. You were lucky if you found a job, if you found a profession, you found something that you could do, and you were happy you had that. That was your parnosa. That's what kept you going, And Rabbi Dr. Ivan Lerner, who is a psychiatrist, he's in Silver Spring, and also a legend in the field of Jewish education. So he told me that when he made the decision to become a psychiatrist, his father said to him, if you're going to spend all that time in school already, why don't you become a real doctor? So he says, because I can help people this way. And his father said, people are going to pay you for this? And he said, yeah. And his father said, when I was young, people were too busy making a living to be crazy. You had to get up in the morning and go to work. I remember seeing a sign once in a store. It says, new employee incentive program. Work hard and don't get fired. So we live in a world today where people can say, I don't feel like working. I don't feel like doing this. Yeah. The Congresswoman from New York, AOC, when she wrote the original Green Deal, which to the best of my knowledge has never been revised, even though she claimed that it was, but it never has been, not online or anything. It said to provide a living, a sustenance for people who are unable or unwilling to work. So this is a new concept. There was no kind of a concept that you get supported if you can't work. So there's concept of giving charity to someone who can't work, they're sick or they're old or something, But just a person who's an able-bodied person and I don't feel like working. So you're lucky to get a job. Having said that, there's a certain amount of choice. Now, if you're someone who is as brilliant and talented as I am, and trust me, it's a curse. So you get stuck because there's so much stuff you could do. I had so many different choices available to me. I didn't know what to do. I went into Habbatzis Torah because I figured that if I work for a Kadosh Baruch Hu, when I get up to Shemayim, I'll go in the employee's entrance. That was my cheshbon. So, just always trying to beat the rap, beat the system. But ideally, you should look and say, what is, and this is what the Gemara in Kedushin says, you want to teach your children a parnosa that is kala v'nekiya, easy and clean, if you can find it, right? And so when you look over what my choices are, so for example, I knew a guy in America, he was planning on making Aliyah, and he became an anesthesiologist. He says, because one of the things about an anesthesiologist is you don't really need to develop a rapport with your patients. So he could fly in for a few months a year and work and make enough money to support himself here in Israel. And that's why he chose that particular profession. I know another person who, for that reason, decided to become a radiologist, because I just have to read the x-rays and now they can send it to you online. I can look at it, write up a report and send it back. I don't have to be there. So they chose their professions based on what would leave them the freedom to be able to do what they really want to do. Now, sometimes you don't have that option. If you don't have those particular talents or those particular gifts, you take what's available, and you're very often lucky to have a job to be able to support your family. And so the answer is, if you have a choice and you could find a job that is fulfilling and will support your family, that's better than a job that you do not find fulfilling and will support your family. If you have a job that you find fulfilling and will not support your family, and you have a job that will support your family, by all means, take the job that will support your family. Now, again, I'm not talking about Kli Kodesh. I'm not talking about getting involved in Habbatzis Torah and any of those formats, because that itself, then I'm working for a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that has its own rewards. But if you're looking at a job, look at a job, ideally, that you enjoy doing, that you get up in the morning and you'd want to do it, assuming that you can support your family. If you can't support your family, then it makes a fine hobby, but it's something to do on the side. But if you have a good job and you can tolerate it without getting depressed. Yeah, I was running NCSY, and by the end, I was so burnt out. I can't even put it. I dreaded coming to the office. I remember I would get at my desk and I put my head on my hands, and the secretary would say, someone's on the line, and I'd say, tell them I'm dead. So they say, Rabbi Orlofsky's not available. And I would start yelling, no, tell them I'm dead. Don't tell them I'm not available. Tell them I'm dead. She's covering up the phone and says, yeah, he'll get back to you. I knew I had to leave. And people were shocked because I was really at the top of my game at that particular moment. I was, my region was doing well. Everything was in place. Everything was running smoothly. We had the funding. Everything was good. We had but it wasn't. I was so burnt out. I needed to recreate myself. And so I came to Eretz Yisrael to learn for 3 years. And then I was going to go into Rabbanis. That was 35 years ago. I haven't gotten around to going back yet. Packing is such a pain. But anyway, but I knew I had to move on to whatever was next. And that's what you have to always ask yourself, right? So if I have a good job and it's killing me, I just can't handle it, So then, you have to move on to something else. But if it's just like, this is not my fulfillment, your job is not supposed to be your fulfillment. I was living in Eretz Yisrael for a year and I came back. So I met someone who goes, oh, you're living in Eretz Yisrael? What are you learning? Before I can answer, he says, I've learned my lesson. He says, I meet people who come from Eretz Yisrael and I say, so what do you do? And he says, I'm learning Kedushin. And I said, you're learning in Kolo? He says, no, I'm a computer programmer. But you didn't ask me what I do for a living. You asked me what I'm doing. What I'm doing is learning Kedushin. And I make my living from this. I make my living from that. But that doesn't define me. It's a famous story with the Brisker Rav where this guy is, he says, who are you? He says, I'm in the sugar business. So, okay. Asked him a little later, who are you? He says, I'm in the sugar business. I bring in, the sugar cane from, the Caribbean and I make it the sugar. And he does this like 3 or 4 times. The guy can't understand. And finally the Brisker Rav says, I didn't ask you what you do for a living. I asked, who are you? So your profession is not supposed to define you. What's supposed to define you is your Judaism, your connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your family, your community, and the job is just a way of supporting the things that are important in my life. So if that's helpful, okay. Next, anonymous. What chizuk would you give to someone who would like to take it upon themselves to only cover their hair with tichels and not shaitels in the community that looks down upon it? The chizuk I give you is, to quote Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. You're never going to make everybody happy. It's a fool's errand. And any time that you're going to live your life based on what everybody else thinks of you, forget about it. I remember seeing Amnon Yitzchak, and he engaged in this discussion with this secular guy. He couldn't have been totally secular if he came to hear Amnon Yitzchak already, but, and he finally answered all of his questions. And then he says, but if I become frum, he says, all of my friends are going to make fun of me. So he gives them a mashal. He says, imagine that you've committed crimes and you're guilty. No question you're guilty. And you're about to be sentenced. And you're going to go to prison for 25 years. And the judge says, if you can show me real remorse, if I see a tear, I'll let you off. So you start to think about it, and your eyes start to water up. And your friends in the back go, Ma, together? What are you, a baby, a girl? You can start crying. So what are you going to do? You're going to stop because of that? And go to jail for 25 years because I don't want to be embarrassed. Trust me, I have been in many social situations as I was becoming frum, and it can be quite embarrassing. Yeah. Walking down the street in dark clothes and a white shirt and a black hat in certain areas, especially a beach club, it can be very embarrassing. I remember when I was speaking at a birthright group once, and the guy in charge says, don't leave your hat in the car. I said, if my hat stays in the car, I stay in the car. So he says to me, no, because when people see a black hat, they, right away make certain assumptions. And I said, I know. I want to wear my hat so that I can break those assumptions. If I'm defined by my clothing, if I let myself dress in a way that's going to make other people accept me, then I have no existence. I'm just a product of whatever anybody thinks of me. And I know girls who wear skirts that are ut at the knee, and when they sit down, it rides up because that's the style and they want to fit in. And I know people who wear sheitlach, where they're not covering all of their hair because that's what the sheitel macher told them is the style and they want to fit in, even though they themselves have told me that they are uncomfortable. And the answer is, to thine own self be true. If this is what you believe is right, then you follow it through. If it's not something that's inherently negative, and you're following whatever your minhag is or whatever is positive, embrace it. And read Perek Hey of Mesilas Yesharim, where he discusses what to do with people who are making fun of you. And that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sponsor an episode. You can sponsor the Q&A. You can sponsor the 5-minute Parsha minute. 5 minutes. Yeah, you can download the theme song. You can make a comment, send an email. Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us do it your way. And that's what we do here at the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Everyone has an opportunity to have articles up there, links, all kinds of fun stuff. So that's it. Until next time, I am David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.